what kind of event
So I really want to thank everybody for coming. Pretty much same faces that we see at every event. So I want to, as usual, I want to go around and if you introduce yourself, what you do, and so forth. And then I'll be last. Well, you'll be last because you're presenting. And while you do that, I'm sorry, I'm going to go make coffee because I do need my second coffee. And you can start.
All right, good morning everybody. Amy Dumas with Watson Realty Corp. And I love being part of this experience. I say an experience because I feel like we learn something new every time we come here. And just here for any real estate needs or anybody who's looking to get into the real estate profession.
Hi, Cynthia. I'm here for two things. First and foremost now is my new business, Executive Concierge. I am looking to help solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and small business owners revive their passion by taking all those things that they hate doing and doing them for them so that they can actually enjoy what they actually want to do. So that's one. And then the other is Funky Fandom Fashion, where I do custom-made products for your passion. So whatever you love, I can help you find something to wear for.
That was me. So I'm Nicoletto, and I work here at Logan Funeral Home, and we do allow functions here at Nicoletto. So if people don't like it, then F them and too bad.
That's right.
That's what I say typically. But, so I help people with their arrangements in advance, and now I'm looking for smaller groups or businesses that will want to have a free lunch on me and let me come in and talk for 10 minutes on the benefits of pre-planning. So if you know anyone or a place, let me know. Other than that,
Can it be
this
as small
is
as one
great.
person? I mean, you can take me to lunch anytime you
Absolutely.
want.
Absolutely, I think so. I agree. And I also want to say, and I was telling to Dr. Maria, I think we all need to promote this event more.
Yes.
And if you're here today, make sure you create a post, include next month on it. There is a post of the next month, right? I was just going to say, is the event created? Is the event created already every month?
It's been,
Yes,
it's already up there.
I mean, it's like a
It's
repeat, right?
reoccurring.
Okay, so yes, tag the event, and or maybe Erica, if you tag us, and we'll tag
I
and
can do that
post
too.
as
Yeah,
well.
girl, make it easy.
So, well, because like she told me too, when I did mine, I was creating like other things, and it wasn't bringing them back to the event. So if you have that, you know, then we can, because I feel there should be a lot more women, because when I tell them about this, like, oh, I have no idea. I'm like, how do you not have any idea about this? You know? It drives me crazy. I know, exactly, but they don't. So I think we should all make it, you know, a part of our day to maybe promote it for next month, and then as it gets closer, maybe as well, like, excited about this, because I think so many more women could benefit from this, and I thank you for starting this. So.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you
It's
so
just
much.
a caution if you tag yourself in here. Be prepared.
If you
Yes.
That friends in other parts of the world, region, whatever, will be like, sorry for your loss.
No, they won't.
Well,
That's why I say to tag the event, not the location.
Right.
I mean, because I work with mindset, you can shift it. I mean, there is positives in being here as well. It's not all about, you know, death is not always all about.
Right.
It's a
Crying.
celebration
It's
of
a
life.
If you're
celebration
tagging
of life.
yourself, that's
So-
all it is. If we tag you, that's it.
That's
Everybody gets a tag when we pick
I'll
them
end
up.
up checking everyone in anyways.
We get a
I'm Ellen
little-
Cole from One and Only Jewelry, and if you are in need of a wedding or a special occasion or just an everyday or a piece to make you happy, let me know. I'll make it for you.
And hey, what about your event?
Oh yeah, I'm having an event here on the 28th.
Next week, Wednesday.
Yes, Wednesday.
And you
At
just pop
what time?
in. Tell us the time.
At what time?
From 6 to 8.
I'll just pop in.
And I will have, oh, that's another thing.
She's working on
I'm
that.
having a door raffle, and I'm having a special raffle for breast cancer awareness.
So if anybody wants to
And
donate,
that'll be,
they
yeah.
can as well, right, Ellen? If they want to donate a prize that night, they could donate as well for you to have a door prize and everything.
Actually, I wanted to talk to you about if you want to do a bag, if you want to do some bags.
Money?
Well, you can stick
No.
around after.
The,
Ellen, hold on. Cindy. Oh, you did?
She
I wasn't here, I
was-
wouldn't comment.
So I'm Kara King, I'm a medical esthetician at Bella Spa. We do facials, chemical peels, microneedling, skin resurfacing. We do microblading, which is permanent makeup for eyebrows. We're getting into the time where it's about to be very, very busy. People want to get in and have things done before the holidays. Don't wait until the last minute. I can do some magic in an hour, but you're better off if you start early. Also, we'll be having some special events coming up. My business partner is coming back. She's a snowbird. She's in Ohio. She'll be back in like 2 weeks, and we'll be doing an event, and I'll let you know the date and time and everything.
Awesome.
She was back.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sarita Shimoni. I'm with New York Life. I help people protect the things that are important to them. I help people protect their standard of living when unexpected tragedies happen in their lives. This place is actually very appropriate for me to be. I talk about the things that nobody really wants to talk about, death and money. So, yeah, that's me. This is my first time here.
This is your first time here?
Yes.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you so
And you
much.
know Lisa, right? Lisa Byer?
No,
No? Oh, okay.
I've heard her name.
Okay.
She knows what her pick it.
Yeah.
We get around.
That's all that matters.
We get around.
So, it's never too late to buy life insurance. Right. Until it's too late.
Until it's too late. Yeah. Never too early.
So I'm Laura Fickett. I do a lot of things, actually, some things that people don't know about. I'm a controller for a multi-million-dollar corporation up in Massachusetts. Somebody was like, I didn't know that, I do that. That doesn't pertain to here. What you know me as is a financial stress reduction coach. So that's what I do best, that's my mission, that's my passion. There's all kinds of things going on in the news right now. The feds are gonna raise interest rates again fairly soon.
Well, they already did this
Like,
Monday, yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
though, probably in November.
Yeah.
They're trying to combat inflation. They don't want to toss around the word recession, but we're in recession right now. The Dow dropped this week.
What?
People lost all kinds of money again this week.
Yes, we did.
Those problems don't go away when you bury your head in the sand like an ostrich. When you pull your head out, they're actually worse. So, my goal is to help people figure out what they should be doing differently with their finances. I want you to make more money, see opportunities, manage it better, and retain it to build your wealth. My husband and I also have an advertising business. If you want to put your swag in there, it's like a welcome wagon. And I do an online book club. This month we're doing 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Non-fiction book club, because some of those are really hard to read and you need somebody accountable to make you go through the book and to coach you through the book. So
Oh, when are you starting that?
I started it in February.
Oh. I listened to it on an audio version.
I will invite all of you ladies.
Yeah.
You probably have been invited before. The first month is free.
I didn't
and
know
then
that
after
was the
it's
book you were
$9.99.
doing, so
Yeah.
that's,
We're doing all kinds, next month it's a Dr. Phil book, and so it's books that, typically you pick up and you read 2 chapters and then you're like, ah.
Yeah, and what happens with that is that sometimes we pick up a book like a self-help book and we read it, but it's those books that you really have to read twice or 3 times in order to really understand and implement in our life. So having someone to bounce off and to kind of, talk about it, that helps the processing part and understanding what it's all about.
I post online Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 3 chapters a week, and so even, people are like, well, even if I don't read the book, I read like your clip notes, and it's kind of catch it.
Yeah, in South Florida, I did something similar with self-help books and helping people through understanding that. So I'm Dr. Maria, everybody knows me, and I'm from MD Consulting, and I am a brain-based coach and business strategist who specializes in entrepreneurs and small businesses, helping them improve their performance so they can grow and become more successful and profitable. For me, because of my background, I primarily work on mindset and people, entrepreneurs, and helping them look at what is blocking them from growing their business. But I also do business planning and everything that involves with business strategy as well. I just want to talk a little bit about the group because Nina brought it up. My vision for this group, there are so many women in the community and we all are successful women who have a story to tell and something to give to another woman. So for me, this is about a community event and helping each other learn from our experiences, the challenges we face, as well as maybe the challenges we are currently facing as well. So keep that in mind. I invited Nina, I'm going to put you on the spot, because she was telling me her background and the challenges she faced in corporate America, which are very similar to my challenges as well. But she was telling me how she responded to those challenges, what she did to overcome those challenges. So I invited her, hey, why don't you come up here one of these days and tell your story of your experiences as a business woman in corporate America. So with that, I'm so excited, very excited, to have Erica. She's my friend, a colleague, a communications and relationship expert.
That's correct.
And if you were here in July, the topic was limiting beliefs, but my presentation was very general. So what I wanted to do this month is to really go into the nitty-gritty and be more specific with the limiting beliefs, particularly in relationships. Maybe I'll get Laura one day to come up and talk about limiting beliefs in financial.
Any day you want.
You see, I put people in the spot. So I'll leave the floor to you.
Okay, well, you guys pretty much all know me, except for Mr. Yes, well, very nice to meet you. So I'm Erica, I'm a communications and relationship expert. So I educate on sexual assault prevention and recovery, healthy intimacy, and adolescent safety. Today's presentation, you could say, is part of my story. I've been through a few traumas in my life that did affect where I am today, both professionally and personally. Like Maria said, you guys did she did a presentation on limiting beliefs a few months ago, and I wanted to touch base on what that looks like within relationship dynamics. So we're kind of going to summarize a little bit of what happened in July. So beliefs are a collection of interpretations and feelings based on our painful or pleasurable past experiences. So they can either be limiting or empowering. The challenge is many of us don't consciously decide what to believe in. It's, once we feel strong about something, we kind of stick with that. So our personal beliefs are, play a really big role in how we see ourselves and the world around us. Even though our beliefs aren't reality itself, that's our thoughts on reality. So, most of the time we want to live in this perfect world with a perfect partner, and we end up actually, with partners that kind of fall below our standards, and we're living this unfulfilling life. And why is that? Because we allow limiting beliefs about, our surroundings kind of determine what we attract into our lives. And also, just to mention, I don't want to be just lecturing the whole time. If you have something to say, if a slide kind of pops out at you or something that I say triggers a thought, please speak up, because it is meant to be a discussion-based presentation. So let's talk about our past experience. In this particular example, we have someone whose father abandoned their family. So this particular person, their limiting belief is going to be that they're an abandonment waiting to happen. So in their life, they're attracting experiences that validate that belief. They're attracting relationships that confirm that belief. They seek out partners who abandon them or are emotionally unavailable. So this is something we're doing unconsciously. Even if you end up with someone, or even if this person ends up with someone who isn't going to abandon them and is emotionally available, the outcome ends up just being reversed, where that person ends up abandoning their partner or being emotionally unavailable to them, therefore recreating that belief. Is there anyone here that could, relate to that, or relate to self-sabotaging or sabotaging a relationship?
Okay, absolutely.
I think we do that all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Whether it's in a relationship or in other areas of our life.
Or any interpersonal relationship, whether it's at work, personal. So does anyone here have an example that they don't mind sharing with the group?
So my father didn't intentionally abandon me. He died in a car accident when I was 14. And so that gave me abandonment and catastrophic thinking at the same time. So what I've learned from my psychologist and from a hypnotist is that when traumatic experiences happen in your life, you've attached emotion to the experience, and if you don't address that, it's a spot. It's like a spot in your brain. And it stays there. It's like a dark spot in your brain. So when those things happen, if you don't address it, that spot replays and replays and replays. If you do work through it and address it, then you can dissipate that spot, and then it becomes less of like a dark spot, more just like gray matter. You can't ever completely eliminate the event in your life, but you've learned how to make it not so stagnant so that it replays over and over again. Because when you break it apart, it's impossible to replay exactly the same. So that was like a visual as to how these experiences impact our life. And so I found that, you know, in my earlier life and relationships, I was always waiting, like even if it was good, I was waiting for it to end. You know, there was the catastrophic thinking in there. Or if they didn't hug me or kiss me or like be with me enough, I felt abandoned and all kinds of stuff. So, but when I dissipated it, when I went through it and dissipated it, then like it doesn't replay anymore.
Right.
So, and that's a great example, and to add to what you're saying is that, and we've talked about this, looking at it from the mind perspective, the reason sometimes it's challenging is because our emotions are found in the innermost part of our brain. So, because it's in the innermost part of our brain, it is very challenging. It's very unconscious, and it's very challenging to bring it out. So when you bring it out, you're actually bringing it to awareness, where it goes from the inner part of your brain and your mind to the forefront, which is the frontal lobe, the forefront of your mind. So that's why it's so important when that psychologist said scatter it out, you're actually scattering it to awareness, to the front side of the brain, so you can deal with it, so it doesn't stay inside internally. And I'm going to end with this, because what ends up happening with emotions is just like water, it seeps out. It seeps out. And it seeps out when you least expect it. So how does it seep out? Through frustrations, through irritability, through crying. So just keep that in mind, but great visual.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's what I was going to mention too, is the emotional attachment that we put on these experiences. That is where that limiting belief comes from. So when we enter a new relationship, we end up with some of these limiting beliefs here. These are just some examples that I came up with, and here are their counterpart. So although we can't like clearly recognize whether we are entering a relationship with limiting or empowering beliefs, because sometimes it's hard to decipher which is which, normally the relationship that you're in is going to clearly kind of show you what it is that you are attracting. So here, for example, we might enter a relationship and say, I'm afraid this person is going to leave me, like you were saying. So something that you could counteract with that is, I create my own reality and am responsible for what I create. I'm too old to find love. I hear this one all the time, especially with some of my clients. But you could say there's always a way if I'm committed. I'm no good at relationships because every relationship I've had has failed. I'm guilty of that one. Definitely guilty of that one. But the past doesn't equal the future. So your past isn't going to define you, and your past doesn't mean that that's what needs to repeat over and over again. No one thinks I'm good enough. Now this is something we all struggle with, but you could say I give more of myself to others than anyone expects. So you're kind of turning it into a positive, almost affirmation. I will never be able to trust anyone. A lot of us have trust issues. If I can't, I must, and if I must, I can. So what are some other limiting beliefs that you can think of, or that maybe that you have, or that you're struggling with, or have struggled with in the past?
Well, I think you mentioned for me is I'm not good enough. And when you said trust, it's not only trusting other people, it's also trusting yourself as well, the relationship you have with yourself as well, but good enough. I've always loved education, and that's great, but because I felt that I needed to be better, I've always strived to do more, which there's a negative to that. I'm tired. And I think we all tend to be that way, and not good enough, and perfectionist. For me, perfectionism.
Yeah.
In order for me to be good enough, I have to be perfect.
Same.
You know, and that's an only child syndrome as well.
Yeah.
Because I'm an only child, so I just have to put that out there.
Me too, same, 100%, exactly. Yeah.
Definitely, I would say I can relate to that. I'm definitely a perfectionist myself, and so I struggle with the fact that I've had people like break up with me because I was too busy or an overachiever, or I didn't have time for them because I was always prioritizing my work. So I don't anymore, but I used to let that negatively impact me, and I felt like, you know, I would sabotage relationships, or even like I would sabotage something before the relationship even started, just because I felt like, why waste my time if I know that they're gonna get sick of me at some point because I'm busy, because of this, because of that. So that was something that I struggled with for quite some time.
Well, that has to do a little bit with catastrophic thinking, right? Where you don't live in the present, you live in the future,
Right.
the events that could or could not happen, and then it's like you're fulfilling the prophecy that you created for yourself. So if things are great now, you're like, but they're gonna leave me in the future or
Yeah.
whatever. You just think it's not.
You're
gonna
already
happen.
like predicting the future.
Yeah, so we tend not to live in the present, we
In
live in
the
the past or the future.
Exactly.
Can you talk a little bit about, because it's relationship not only in a workplace as well, because we do sabotage
Absolutely.
workplace relationships as well.
That's why I'm
So-
going alone.
Well, I don't know about you, because you mentioned like perfectionism, but you know, I know with my experience, I haven't had a 9-to-5 job probably since I was 21, maybe.
Yes,
20.
anyway.
Yeah. Thank you. And I had a really terrible experience on the way out. So I was fired for not dressing provocatively enough. But at the time I was really young, and I didn't know that that was something that I could like do something about. Again, limiting beliefs. I thought sexual harassment was just a thing. You know, that was one of my limiting beliefs at the time. So that experience really turned me off to ever working a corporate job again. I didn't like the structure of like being told what to do, when to do it, when to take time off, etc., etc. Plus the added pressure of how I have to look as a woman in the workplace. So there was only one time that I attempted to get another job, and I don't know if I sabotaged it, but I was almost too independent in that job, and I got let go again, and I was like, nope, having a corporate job is not for me. Sometimes I think maybe subconsciously I didn't want it to work out. I didn't want maybe to be in that environment, or, you know, again, because your limiting beliefs really are an unconscious thing that you're doing. You know, you don't recognize whether you have a limiting or empowering belief until you really become aware of what you're attracting. So now looking back, I don't know if I wanted that job to work. You know what I mean? So I think I was partially at fault for that particular job not coming into fruition. So I was there for 2 months and I was out the door. So thank you. That's a really good question. Can you guys think of any personal experiences similarly to that? I know we all work for ourselves for the most part now, but
usually we start somewhere.
we start somewhere, right?
Even if you're 21,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
Usually you start somewhere.
I know. I was weird. I was out of high school. Was like, screw working for people, but.
I think sexual harassment is definitely something that falls into limiting beliefs.
Absolutely,
Because of the not good enough, because of I cannot make it out because I'm a woman.
Yep.
I cannot make it out in the world, so I have to stay here in order to be able to make money, in order to be able to be successful. So I think sexual harassment is definitely falls into that limiting belief.
And, yeah, go ahead. Cynthia.
I think empowering abuse is also something that we fall victim to quite often. Because in a lot of the positions that I've had, I'm often working with the boss, and they have no concept on how much they abuse their people.
Oh, they have no idea.
And that's something that we just take.
Right.
Because, well, what else are we gonna do? What else can we do? Since it's a lot of the times really the only person that's really the end all be all, there's no HR department, there's nothing else. but it's like, I need a paycheck, so how much am I willing to tolerate before I say enough's enough?
Well,
Tolerate
even if you,
toxic
even if you go to HR, they're
They're
going to
waste
pick
of time.
the person who's there. They're gonna pick the doctor, they're gonna pick the executive, they're gonna pick the higher up
And that's
over here.
exactly,
And it doesn't, yeah.
that's exactly what happened in my situation when I got let go. It was at a golf resort locally. And so I went to HR and they gave me like a chance to rectify the situation. So they suspended me for 3 days and they told me that I needed to change my uniform within that 3 days. I said, look, I only make enough money to maybe afford a new pair of golf shoes. I knew what they were looking for, but I'm like, I could buy a new pair of golf shoes and kind of take it from there. But I was angry with them because I'm like, you provided the uniform, so I'm a little confused as to why you want me to change how I look. And they blatantly said, why don't you dress more like Susan, who was a particular retail manager at the time, who was basically, the Barbie, very blonde, the boobs and all the things. So that brought my self-esteem really down. And those 3 days that I was suspended, I was anxious and freaking out the whole time. So I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to appease them. And I needed the job, I needed the money. And I came back, I had gotten the pair of shoes and it wasn't good enough and I was fired, and the HR department defended that decision. Yeah. And so that just completely changed my perspective about working for other people. But what's weird is that I almost went the other direction. Some people will go, low self-esteem, depression, and that is what follows them. While I kind of became overconfident and then started working for a woman, not a man, and it still didn't work out. So it was but like I said, in a way, I'm now looking back, I'm like, did I even want that to work out? And when I work with women, it's intimidation. So it's with men, it's the sexual harassment. With women, it's intimidation, because there isn't that sisterly bond that you would like to have, with your boss or with your colleagues. Go ahead, Amy.
So I think that when you talk about empowering ourselves and changing our belief system, part of that is, and that's what I now, or having potential realtors that could work here in that office, in my office, I expect them, just like I was doing, is I went out and I interviewed brokers. I wanted to see, what culture do you represent? Where do I fit into this culture? And I asked them the question. So I interviewed the company to say, do I want to work with you or for you, or however you want to, do that. But I think as women, it's understanding we have the ability to interview companies that we think we might want to work for. Do we want to work for Amazon because they're global and I want to travel, and what if I could transfer within the company here or there? Okay, so there's that, desire. Or do I want to work for a local company because I really want to stay in this market, and there's a lot of local businesses here. There's just a lot there. So you go, where would I fit in? So you start interviewing those. Is it education? What university do I want to work? What situation? And you mentioned the golf resort.
Yeah.
I come from a hospitality background, so I do to know that you have the ability to do some research. There's so many hospitality companies out there and who they're based out of. The culture and the training and all that. There's Hilton, there's Marriott, there's Bainbridge Hospitality, all these. So it's the same with the golf resort. So it's there's this golf, because we have tons of golf,
We have so many.
Yeah, so where do I see, what are they trying to achieve? Is more of that little network of, for taking your example, of the women that are out there trying to, earn money, how are they doing it? Is it more of use that as an example. Is it a Hooters? Is it a Hooters environment, or is it I want to get my tuition paid, my college, or my student loans paid, so I'm going to be friendly and outgoing, and this is just my nature, this is my character. But you have an array of young women that are doing this out for trying to make money, but they don't have to fit a certain mold, and you're not part of that mold, but you can have your own character, your own. You can bring something to that whole level of culture that the guest is experiencing. So you have that opportunity to ask those really deep questions and see, do I fit there? And if not, then you move on to the next one. But I think that's part of it, is understanding it's not about, oh, there's these jobs available. It's where do I want to work? And going, you know, why is it that I have to look through the job ads? Why don't I just go and create that, you know, opportunity for myself?
And it's okay to be picky. Like a lot of women in general, like they're like, well, I need the money, therefore I'm going to deal with the BS. And it's like, no, like it's okay to be picky.
So we look at leadership, at least I do. I used to, and I've changed my mind in what leadership really is. We look at leadership as the manager, the CEO, and we really are leaders of our own life.
Exactly.
We are leaders, and what happens is, historically, we have always been told we should not speak up. Two things. One, we need to be aware of what we need and want, and we just don't speak up. So as leaders, I think for us, for education, we need to speak up when we do see that toxic culture. And I've worked a great deal with corporate America in implementing a culture where people can grow. But I don't see that in small businesses, because it is small businesses, but yet there is a culture issue even within a small business. And I think just changing that mentality, that we are leaders of our own life, and we are in leadership roles every single day of our life, so therefore it's important for us to speak up. For me, that's how I view it.
Well, in order for us to change that mentality too, is to become aware of what your limiting beliefs are, going back to how we do it unconsciously. So in order for you to become aware and honestly, like you have to honestly question your beliefs in order to change it into an empowering belief. In order to do that, you have to recognize what it is that you're attracting and what situations you've been in repeatedly, and that's going to show you what your limiting belief is, and then you can start eliminating them, you know, little by little, and turning it into an empowering belief, thus changing our mentality. So, and that's a really good point, because now we're going to talk about some of the harmful limiting beliefs that are out there, because we're talking about culture. I love how we're like all in sync, because this is exactly what I was going to go into next. But, you know, violence against women and girls is rooted in widely accepted social norms, and those social norms are created by limiting beliefs that contribute to gender inequality, including male entitlement, domination, and control over our bodies. So 1 in 3 women will experience physical or sexual violence in her lifetime. So that's about 736 million who are subjected to physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner or by a non-partner, and that number has remained pretty unchanged over the past decade, which is really sad. And I actually did a little further research, and it's actually 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men. So the World Health Organization, they put this statement out, and then yesterday I decided to look into that a little bit more, and it's actually 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men. So men go through it as well.
And then you have limiting beliefs as well.
Yes, yes.
That's just the recorded cases.
And that's just reported, exactly. Because
There are some women, I know this from a friend of mine, her daughter was assaulted and it went unsaid.
I think it's really a silent, everybody's, you know, it's taboo, it's silent, especially when we talk about domestic violence. Because you don't want to invite strangers into your home, into your sanctuary. So, you know, it's very personal, your sanctuary, and I think it stays quiet.
Yeah, and I think, so some of these harmful social norms, you know, this touches base a little bit on what we were discussing, how these norms can also affect our limiting beliefs within a workplace and within our interpersonal relationships. So under submission, the first one we have there is women must be submissive to male family members in all aspects of her life. So having rigid gender roles, like that's still a thing to this day. There are families out there that believe there are, you know, men do X, Y, Z and women do X, Y, Z. And normally it's the woman being submissive to the man and making sure that his needs are met.
I'm going to stop on that word submissive, only because my husband and I are actually in a couples Bible study right now for marriage. Like, because I love to learn, and why not learn more about the Bible, because it's like reading Shakespeare sometimes, right? So So the word submissive used to, if you think about, like, the word submissive in the world has a horrible connotation. It means like to be put down while somebody else is above you, suppressed and everything else. But in, thousands of years ago, the word submissive meant that you gave up your will to follow a leader that you respected and you trusted, that was going to take care of you and your every need. And it wasn't this horrific word that it's turned into. And so, like, people, they go back to the Bible, and I don't know what your affiliations are, but they think, like, oh, the wife is not supposed to submit. I'm not going to submit to my man because that means he's going to tell me what to do. That wasn't how it was.
Right.
Like, I follow Jesus because I want to, not because I have to. I submit my will to him because I want to. And the same way with my husband, because I respect him, I trust him, I know that he is sacrificing his life for me and my family, and he always has my best interest, I willingly submit to him.
And
that
that's not,
word submissive, like,
right, but
Yeah, it has a
submission,
negative connotation.
it does have a negative connotation, but we are talking about it in the negative context.
Right.
Because, like, I'm a woman of faith as well, so I understand your context. Because really, we're looking to our husbands to be the spiritual leader of our household and making sure that. So I understand submission in that aspect.
so it's not
But
always
that's
that.
not. Yeah, but
In this
And
scenario,
it's not always being submissive to a man. There are
Right.
many men who are submissive to women.
Yes.
They choose
Okay.
to do that.
There are women who are controlling, there are women who are very domineering,
absolutely.
and they are submissive.
Smothered,
And
that shows smothered.
And I work with that every day of my life. I'm just kidding. But anyway.
No, so I'm talking about it in the context of there are cultures out there where the girls grow up being taught that they should be submissive to their husbands in the sense of obeying them and not pursuing any type of equal decision making. Whereas in a Christian household, they're still a team.
even in that scenario, they fall short with, they don't understand what's the man's role so that the woman will, right? Because if my husband is somebody I don't respect, that lies, that cheats, that doesn't have my interests or my best back and wouldn't give up his life for my family, then I won't submit to him. So they fall short on what is your role as a man. You have to be,
Right.
They don't discriminate.
Right.
you have to be up here if you want your woman
Must
to do this.
I just prefer the gender roles to get me out of mowing the grass. To take me off the track.
Well, those are tasks.
Those are tasks.
Those are tasks.
Those are boys' jobs.
Hey, my mother, God rest her soul,
I like mowing.
she took care of the house. She took care of the house, she took care of the outside. My father went out to work, and one time, I'll tell you a real quick funny story, and you guys are gonna get a laugh. The boiler broke. My dad kept on saying, oh, well, I'll fix it. Every time he touched it, he didn't fix it. They called, they had a boiler guy came in, spoke to my mother, said, Mary, I got a class for you to take. My mother took the class, got certified in boiler mechanics. My mother fixed that boiler, my father came home, oh, you had that repair guy here. My mother pulled out a certificate. No, Thomas, I'm certified. I can do something.
Isn't that what women do?
My
We're so
father,
go-getters.
I've never seen in all the years that my father ever looked at my mother as an equal on that day. Us kids were like,
Oh my gosh.
and that empowered, and I'm going to use that word, that strong word, it empowered us, well actually me, to say, well okay, it may be a man's thing, but a woman could do it too.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been single, living alone for a long time. I've had to play both roles, like quite a bit.
So
it's
it's
no, but so culturally, that's something that plays into our limiting beliefs. And then we also have men. So like the men's role. There's some men who are expected to exercise coercive control. So you can see that manifest sometimes in partners that, control their wives or their girlfriends, like social media or phone monitoring and things like that. So while we're expected to be submissive, men are expected to exercise control. And so sometimes it'll manifest in that way. And I did some research, and in Latinx communities, like the Caribbean, like 78% of men, like, they control their partner's social media and phones. And like the women are like okay with this because they're conditioned to like think that that's okay. So that's an example of how culturally those limiting beliefs, you know, pop up. Also, bottom here, men have the right to discipline women for incorrect behavior. There are some countries that still believe that violence is accepted if their woman isn't doing what they're asked to do. Like, and it still happens in the US, but this is just a general one that I found that still happens culturally around the world. So, you know, physical abuse is never okay, but if someone is growing up in a culture where it's accepted, then they're conditioned to be okay with it. So they don't, again, not knowing whether you have limiting beliefs or not, these women or these people that may be experiencing this, they don't know that it's a limiting belief, they just think it's normal. Then we also have bodily control, women not being able to deny their male partner sex. So that's also something that is prominent in the US and in other parts of the world. I feel like that perpetuates intimate partner abuse and intimate partner rape. Not being able to deny your partner's sex, sexual harassment being normal. That's something that I dealt with myself. You know, how many times have you heard growing up, oh, well, that's just how boys are.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like even as kids, oh, that's just how boys are.
Yeah.
So like you grow up conditioning to think that it's okay, and then you work somewhere where you get fired for not dressing provocatively enough, and then in your mind you feel like you did something wrong.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's something that I don't understand how we grew up listening to this. Like,
Well, I think men are sexualized. We sexualize men and it's okay. They, you know, they love sex. It's okay for them to have sex. It's okay. It's
Right.
not okay for women to be sexualized because then they have that connotation of being.
but
you
it
know,
goes back to women not denying their male partner's sex. It's almost like we're these like sexual objects that are meant to just fulfill the man's sexual needs. So, you know, we grew up hearing that. That also affects our relationships later on in life, both in the workplace and personally. Women experience violence because they are dressed provocatively, so that's another one that ties into incorrect behavior. All women should become mothers. So I'm also someone who's experienced that limiting belief growing up, where in some cultures, in some households, depending on what religion or country or wherever you're from, this is a common belief that we, you know, girls are meant to grow up and be moms. That is their sole purpose in life, and that can create a very toxic, limiting belief as well. You know, I'm 35 years old. I don't plan to get married. I don't plan to have kids. That's just never been something I wanted to do. But when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I struggled a lot with that limiting belief because, you know, I grew up in a, you know, Hispanic household where most of my cousins, that's really what they grew up to be. It's just like, they may have a job, maybe they're stay-at-home moms, and that's okay. But I kind of felt that pressure of like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Like everyone's doing what they're supposed to do and like, I'm not, and maybe there's something wrong with me. You know, my parents did not help the situation because they've always had negative comments about it. So that's another like limiting belief that I had struggled with too. You know, I meet guys who, especially at my age, dating at my age is tough because I'm in my 30s and most men already have children or, you know, are divorced or whatever, and like I have zero interest in that. You know, so I feel like I sabotage right away. Even if they're a good guy, I'm like, nope, you know, and it's because I'm so, you know, my past experience creating that limiting belief, I'm rebellious. Like, it's not that I feel like I need to be that. I'm like, no, I'm going to avoid that as much as possible, you know? So,
It's interesting because my daughters, I have two daughters in college, a son in college too. My daughter, she's a psychology major, and so we have good conversations. But she was telling me that she feels like a limiting belief now is that the women's movement has moved so far that now if she says to her friends, like that want to be lawyers and whatever, that, you know, she wants to have a career, but she wants to be a stay-at-home mom,
yeah.
she feels that people look down at her like, that. Now that the pendulum has swung
It has
so
swung,
far.
yeah, it has swung.
Yes.
It
So you're
has.
right, that now that's a limit, like that's a
'Cause-
belief that women shouldn't be that anymore.
Because it's
I'm
opposite,
like,
yeah, it's
God,
opposite
can't we be
beliefs.
in the middle
Yeah.
somewhere?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure, because like with me, that limiting belief was when I was growing up, so like 80s and 90s.
And now it's swung
And
so
now-
far.
It's like on the other side where I'm now being praised that I'm this like independent, no kids, no
And now
whatever.
she's being looked
But
down
that's
on.
toxic too. Yeah, like you gotta find some balance.
But doesn't corporate America do that to women? Because they will, if there's a job opportunity available to move up in a company, and there's a woman that's single, no kids, versus a woman that's got kids and in school age, and a husband. So they both go for the job, and they take the person that has no family responsibilities over the person that has, because they're gonna say, well, we want you to be fully engulfed in our corporation, versus, oh, we don't want to hear you have to calling out because your son's sick or your
Daycare
husband's.
or the.
No, it's
Exactly.
the exact, yeah, it definitely is. Like, I had my daughter when I was 19, and I was always very reliable, but if my daughter was sick or if there was something
That comes
going on,
first.
I had such guilt trips. I remember my daughter had lice one time, and I was the manager of a medical office, and there were people coming from Central Florida that were coming to this meeting that we were having in the morning, and I couldn't even cancel it. And my husband had to come sit in the parking lot with my daughter until I was finished, so then I could go take care of her having lice, because I couldn't even just not go or not attend it, because then I was looked down upon, and it was frowned upon for me to be, it didn't matter. Any company I ever have worked for always thought that the company was more important than my family.
And seeing that can
Yeah.
manifest into a limiting belief that affects you later on
Oh,
as well.
huge.
So we got 10 minutes.
I had an experience, I had many, as we all,
Many,
experiences,
many.
but one that just came to mind, I wasn't offered as a psychologist, and I was working in corporate America. I wasn't offered a position because I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And actually somebody who I supervised, was offered that position. Needless to say, that was the end of that.
Because they look at it as such a detriment. They're like, oh no, we don't want you calling out, and I've been asked in interviews, do you have reliable daycare? Do you have someone to pick up your kid?
And that's illegal.
That totally has happened.
But it's
It
funny.
has happened. So how did you respond to that? I know we have 10 minutes, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, I
curious
have
as to
2
how
minutes.
you respond to that.
I always reassured every company that they would be my #1 priority, because I wanted that job. I needed that money. I needed to be
And that
in
goes
there.
back to, we're gonna deal with it because of the
Yeah,
need.
because
Because of the need. And then we end up in a worse,
But doesn't the family
in a worse
separate?
situation, because we're in an unfulfilling position, and then that's creating another limiting belief.
Well,
And that's society,
So-
that's really society's expectation, but we have to remember that who changes society?
We do.
We do,
But-
exactly.
And it's changed.
So,
But in that scenario too, we're also creating an unexpected, like, the wrong expectation
Yeah.
for the firm. So
right,
very quickly, I am a visual learner.
yeah.
So I have my own, like, music, right, and you all have your own music. And if I like the sound of your music, like, I'll turn the volume up and I'll listen to you. And if I don't like the sound of your music, I turn your volume down and I listen to you. And once I mute you, you're probably never gonna talk to me again. That's just the way I am, right? So I went to work in a public accounting firm, 3 named partners. I had to go into one of the named partners' offices and take stuff out of there to put it in my office. I bent down, I was picking up things, and I said, oh, this is the last box, like, then I'll be out of your hair. And he saw, like, a tattoo. He said, it's okay, I could look at your tattoo all day.
Yeah.
So I said, this is like my first week on the job. So I thought, oh, I'm not turning the volume up on him, like I'm totally turning the volume down on him. And I said, that's kind of disappointing. This is my first week here, and I respected you as a named partner, and that was kind of disgusting. And I walked out. But then, I didn't avoid him for the rest of my time. He was a named partner. I continued to treat him like my volume was still turned up. I continued to treat him. I didn't completely turn his volume off. And then, like, after a while, it was probably 6 months down the road, and he said, you know what, like, that day you said that to me, like, the respect I had for you went up like a notch. And so,
Right.
so sometimes I think they've been trained in an inappropriate way.
Right, yes.
And
They're conditioned.
And so, yes, they have blame, so I turned his volume down a little bit because he has blame, but then what part do I play to?
Yeah.
Exactly.
To teach
If
him.
we continue to just deal with it because we need said job and we don't stand up for ourselves, we can't change the culture around us at
Now, my
all.
husband,
The
who's
last-
like, I'm going in there and I'm beating
The
his
last
ass."
doctor's one of the doctor's offices I worked at, I assisted in surgery. There were two of us that were his assistants, and he would throw stuff, he would sling stuff, he would say the most inappropriate things you could. But I always was like, and stood my ground and let him know, like, yeah, that's not okay. And then it became a whole entire culture. Oh, well, he doesn't treat Kara that way. Why does he treat so-and-so that way? Because I didn't allow you. I didn't
Right.
allow you.
We teach people how to treat
Because I
us.
had
Yeah.
other awful experiences in the past, and I knew that if I stood up and was like, then they would back off. But
Right.
it
right.
took me being
Right. Well, that's the thing is,
violated many times to
we
build that
have to also
confidence.
recognize, like, we teach people how to treat us.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind when you're in that situation, and that's how we can change the culture around us.
And if you have a challenge, and I know it's hard, but if there is a challenge, there are avenues. You can go to a therapist, you can go to a coach.
Right.
You know, so basically
So
you have those
I'm
avenues.
limited on time, so I'm going to continue. Hopefully you guys don't mind going like 5 minutes over. So we have some other limiting beliefs on this side here. So girls are valued as wives, not individuals, but we kind of touch base on that a little bit. There's some women who grow up feeling like unless they are a wife, they're not good enough. Not all girls are valued as a person. You know, if they don't have that title of wife, they don't feel like they're good enough. So it still happens to this day. Heterosexuality is the only sexual orientation that is acceptable. So that is a very common limiting belief as well, where, you know, lesbians, trans women, and not just sexual orientation, but like disabled women as well. You know, women that are marginalized, they have their own limiting beliefs to deal with as well. You know, so they may not feel like their standard of being a woman or a wife or XYZ is good enough for society or for their husband or to be loved and everything that comes with that. And then divorced women have less value. So all of these here are really just, you know, marginalized women and what they have to go through. You know, so I've met a lot of women that are divorced, and that is a limiting belief in itself. Like, they feel like they're devalued because they've been married before. You know, so that's something that's also very common. But again, if you're in that spot, you know, just being able to recognize what that limiting belief is and slowly turning it into an empowering belief. But first step is to definitely become aware. So, is this my last slide? I don't know. I don't think it is. Okay, so I have this and another. But I really love this quote. Feel free to take a picture of it. Your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. So this was said by Mahatma Gandhi. If you want to replace something old, you have to make room for something new, and bringing it back to the very beginning of this talk, a healthy relationship begins and ends with a healthy love of self. So the way we feel about ourselves is how we're going to affect our surroundings and what our beliefs are about our reality. So this is my last slide. And I didn't mean to go through it quickly, but I do notice I have like a minute left. So quick reminder, beliefs come from your past experiences, and making sure that you change the meaning of your past, so whatever emotion you attach to it, making sure that you change that. Your past doesn't equal your future. So identifying those patterns, becoming aware of what your beliefs are, which you can usually tell by what relationships you currently have and what you're attracting. So becoming aware of that in order to slowly remove those limiting beliefs. challenging your limiting beliefs. So if you know that you have your, certain limiting beliefs, making sure that you challenge and stay honest with yourself about those beliefs. And if you find one creeping in, just saying cancel, 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 saying something empowering in its place. And judgment is the root of your limiting beliefs. So judging yourself or someone else is what creates that disconnection, and compassion is the key to releasing that judgment. We're all judgy. I'm sorry to tell you, we are all super judgy. And that is at the core of what our limiting beliefs are, because we're either judging ourselves, we're judging someone else. That's all coming from our past experiences. So before I end, do we have any closing thoughts that maybe you didn't get to share?
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, when I think you talked about working for even a woman, which I thought that might be better than working for a male. And I've worked for many, and I've worked under leadership of many women that, you throw in the word judgment in there, where you're looking at their style of leadership.
Right.
And you take away some aspects of it in your own development of your own leadership, but then there's some things you go, you know what, this isn't what I'm about. That's not my belief system, what you're trying to evolve in your leadership style. But I think it's important to recognize that everybody, when you talk about judging, everybody has a value. That's why they're there.
Right.
There's something that got them there, something that's, but it's when you're in I call it like everybody else does, they call it their tribe. When you're with a group of women that there's some kind of relatable or identifying thing that's just like, you get it, or you may not be perfect, I'm not perfect, but we can all grow and learn from each other. And I think that's the word where judgment becomes more of a identifier of, okay, what's great, this is why I love you, this is what I take away from you, but let me also help you. Let me give you something. You might not agree with it. You might think that's part of your judgment on me, like, well, I don't like that, But if you can share that and share your why, like why I think this might help you, or why I think you would be great if maybe you did this or added this to your kind of repertoire. They can take it, they can leave it, but I think that's part of it.
Well, and we have to stay open-minded too, and accepting the same kind of feedback. That's why you see people are like best friends, and they can be super transparent with each other and say, okay, you suck at this.
Yeah.
And they're cool with it because they know it's coming out of love, and that's the difference between being super judgy and like actually empowering someone.
You don't have to like somebody, but you have to respect
But you have to respect
them.
that.
So
Exactly.
my thought was a good segue to what you were saying, is that, men have to show restraint versus working for a woman. Women don't have to show restraint. And because of this is a women's group, I want to say that women tend to be very competitive, probably more competitive than men. And I think as women, we really need to support one another, especially in this community, whether we like the person or not. We will have to respect them, but really support one another, because we are the changers. We are the ones who are going to change the society, the way things are run. And I just want you to, even if we're competitive, to have that empathy for one another and to help one another grow.
And I think we're competitive too, because look at all the limiting beliefs we went over. Women have had a lot of limiting beliefs since the beginning of time. There's just so many negative things that have been ingrained in our minds, from a very young age. So I understand that competitiveness, because we're in competition not just with other people, but with ourselves, wanting to prove something, to the world. So, and in addition to what Amy said, like I said, compassion is the key to releasing judgment. You don't know, like if you are working for someone, or you're married to someone, because we're talking about personal and work-wise, if there are negative, like limiting beliefs, think about the limiting beliefs that person may have. It could be why they're, you're turned off by something that they're doing or saying. They have their own set of limiting beliefs that maybe they haven't become aware of yet. So finding a way to maybe make them aware, where you're still respectful, I don't see that as a negative thing. We have to, if we say nothing, like Laura was mentioning earlier, then we don't change our surroundings.
Here's an interesting take though. So like, I'll watch a presentation, and I may not agree with 100% of it. I'm gonna use you as an example because we're friends. So I may not agree with everything that you know, she talks about or whatever, but I use emphatic listening. Like, I try and think, like, well, why does she think that? Let me think of, if I'm Erica, why would I believe these certain things versus how I personally believe? And I'm like, okay, well, I can see that, like, based on what I know about her upbringing and you know, things that have happened in her life. And so I'm not like, I don't judge people or have like,
You're not dismissing it.
I'm not dismissing it, right? And so we can be friends and we can still have different beliefs. I think when people sit there and they're like, I don't believe that, like, and they're so close-minded,
Super close-minded.
super close-minded, that's where the issues, like in my example for that partner, like I could have been angry and I could have been closed-minded. I'm like, you know, this is the 736 millionth time I've been sexually harassed, like what the hell is wrong with these guys, right? But instead I'm like, okay, let me try and think, why would he say that? Why does he think he can get away with that? Like, what can I do to like change the situation? And I analyze it, and I put myself, well, he's just not educated enough. Poor him.
But
Let me educate him right now.
And the last statement I'm going to make is, that goes back to the very beginning of the slideshow where I mentioned that, you know, sometimes we don't even decide what our limiting beliefs are. We're so ingrained, like we create this limiting belief over an experience, and we're so like determined to like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's how we see everything. So while she's able to look at the slideshow and hear me out open-mindedly, there are people out there and they're like, this is what I believe and that is it. And you know, and they're determined to keep it that way. And yes, and well, we did answer a lot of questions throughout, but here's my information if you need it, and
I think we always go over. I honestly believe that we always, and you can leave, but I really think that we honestly go over because this is such an important topic that we really never talk about.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's where it comes from. So thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
That's one of the things about these networking groups. And I noticed since I've been going them, none of the women judge each other. They always got a helping hand out to educate, to empower that next woman, no matter what her position in life is. And you know, every day, every time I go to these meetings, I go home and I'm more empowered to knock out what I'm doing, my passion, and to think about what was said. Like today, you'll be on my mind all day, Kay, because I actually relate to a lot you spoke about. But I used to imagine, I said, that's one thing I bless God for that, bringing me to Florida, because in New York, sorry New York, but you don't have it. They don't have this.
Well, if you go to South Florida, metropolitan areas, it is more community-based, but if you go to South Florida, it's very different as well. And I think it's not necessarily New York, it's when you go into...
Okay, so I like to say that because I'm from New York. But even in Long Island, they didn't have that.
So for everybody...
And I don't want to forget, because I will forget, if you do want to dive a little bit deeper into what we spoke about today, you know, make sure to give me a call or shoot me an email and we can meet up. Also, October 12th at the Streamline Hotel in Daytona, I'll be having a domestic violence awareness fundraiser. I think a lot of you guys know about Denim Day that I did in April, so it's going to be very similar. It'll be a catered reception. We're going to have speakers, but this time I'm hiring a DJ and it's going to be a masquerade ball. So we'll be raising awareness on domestic violence. We'll be fundraising not only for the services I provide, but I believe the Beacon Center will be there as well. Dr. Rivera will be speaking that day. I am looking for event sponsors and raffle prizes.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that'll be from 6 to 9 p.m. Wednesday, October 12th at the Streamline Hotel. We're going to have the rooftop to ourselves for that day.
I'm excited about that. And one last thing, this is the idea of this group. The last few ones was just really about education. I want to make it more about what Erica did today, where we can actually talk and engage. So that's why I want to leave you with that.
Discussion, yes.
I didn't do a sign-in sheet.
Oh my goodness. All right, well, I'm going to take a, well, how about we take a picture and then I'm going to know exactly who is here. All right, so
And it didn't dim.
I'm going to do,
It didn't dim.
it didn't dim. I'm going to do selfie mode.
Okay.
I'll go here, so if you guys want to like crowd around
that's okay, you know, beauty, you know, natural beauty is.
We don't have a lot of.
Are we all in it?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So if you're interested in speaking or sharing your story, or you have something that you want to share with your group, yeah, please let me know to hook you up. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, no, this is great.
Are you coming on?
Which Wednesday?
You tell me what you want me to speak on. I can give you 10 topics, like for example,
And then
finances. Women's
I
that job on top of somebody who works for me. And they use their marketing.
I do that too, yes.
I met you at the,
So don't
because that's really
I'm sorry, we'll get to the birthday party yesterday.
You're not making a choice.
was there, but it wasn't
one of the things I'm gonna do, which actually goes with financial wealth, is mental. Which goes kind of hand in hand, but yes, financial, really getting women to get on financial.
When you have finances,
Yeah.
you have to make choices.
Oh,
You
yeah.
have options.
Yeah.
You don't make choices because you want to, not because you have to.
Let me know.
Thank you for coming.
I always learn something out of it, and I actually wasn't sure, but
Usually things
I
are
think so,
But
it is true, and there's, and I think it's important to recognize that. And that's sensitivity, but we're to take it to that next level.
And that's what it's not only about networking, because we see each other all the time.
But it's really getting into that inner personal, like, your why.
Yes.
Your why.
And then the how as well. Guys, if you please can share the next event, I'll post it, so we can have more people.
I put it on Boss Ladies because we have a thing on Friday, you can post coffee connection. So I put it as my coffee connection.
A lot of this is.
So because it is about community, and you said something, can you just repeat it for you, because you said something so very nicely about the networking groups and how
Oh,
about this.
yeah, no, so there's so many networking groups here on Palm Coast. And I think it's important to dig deeper and to really understand why. Like, why do we go to it? Like, you know, there's certain things you go to for certain reasons, but then going a little bit further with relationships that we make. What makes that relationship important? Why do you think it's important? So what can you communicate to each other? Yeah, to help grow, so.